Hi guys, welcome to Itsy Bitsy's YouTube channel. Today we will be making a beautiful watercolor leaf wreath with 3D floral embellishments. The supplies used would be Little Birdie watercolor set of 48 half pans, beautiful lush vivid colors. Apart from that, we will also be using watercolor paper, which is again from Itsy Bitsy. It's Little Birdie watercolor paper, 100% cotton cold pressed. You could use 200 or 440 GSM. Along with that, we will be using these floral embellishments, decoupage glue, gold marker, black fine liner, and some brushes. Let us now explore this beautiful metallic watercolor set. It has 48 colors in these beautiful plastic half pans which are removable from the rails. The box also contains a water brush and a pull-out tray for mixing. Now on this tray, let us pull out all the colors that we will require for the wreath. We start with permanent green light, which is a beautiful teal color. Then there is sky blue, which is a vivid light blue color. Then there is black green, which as the name suggests is a dark green but it has a beautiful transparent tone. Then there is golden yellow, which is more like a warm yellow color. And then there is rosy, which is a beautiful vivid pink shade. And amaranth, which is a gorgeous purple color. Now using a circle stencil or a compass or any circle object, we will draw a circle of about 6 inches diameter using a pencil. You can already cut your paper to a square size or you could do that at a later stage. We then erase most of that pencil outline so that only a faint guideline of the circle remains for us to make the wreath. We then start painting some simple broad leaves using the permanent green light color. It will be along the circular boundary and it is a personal choice whether you want to make leaves both facing inside the wreath and outside or only facing outwards or only facing inwards. In my wreath, what I'm doing is leaves facing inside as well as outside, mostly alternatingly. I'm trying to keep the sizes of the leaves a little uniform, but I'm trying to keep the curvature sometimes a little upward, sometimes a little lower, so that gives a very natural look to the leaves. I'm making the leaves very pointed. If you want, you could also make them slightly less pointy. Also, if you're not able to make the pointed shape with a brush like number 7 as I'm using, you could use a brush number like 0 or 1 to do the tips. Also important to keep in mind that you should rotate your paper while making a wreath, whether you're drawing or painting a wreath, because that helps you maintain the natural flow of your hand. Once we are done with about 2/3 to 3/4 of the leaf wreath, we will pick up some of the medium-sized watercolor blooms and place them as required to assess the remaining composition of the floral wreath. We leave some space around these flowers to paint tiny buds around them with amaranth and rosy. Using a pencil, we mark 2 points to indicate the area in which the flowers are going to lie. And we remove the flowers and start painting the remaining part of the leafy wreath. Using sky blue color to paint thin, long and curvy leaves. You can make them transparent or opaque by changing the amount of water you use. I have made the color semi-transparent over here. Also, make sure that the leaves are oriented the same way as your broad leaves, as in either completely outside or completely inward or alternatingly in and out the way I have done. We will be painting these blue leaves along the entire leafy region of the wreath. Make sure that some of them are tiny, some of them are long, not very uniform in size. I'm using brush number 7 to continue with this, however you could use a thinner brush. Also, before starting this step, make sure by touching the green leaves done before that they have dried out completely, otherwise your blue color will blend into the green and the form of the old leaves and the new leaves will start merging. To avoid this blending, new layers should always be added once the old layer has dried out. You can check that by checking the temperature of the old layer, the way I just did by touching the green leaves and checking if they are cooler than the rest of the paper or not. Also, there is no hard and fast rule as to which colors have to be used and which order they have to be used in. This is an aesthetic that appeals to me. However, you can use any colors, any color combinations, dark, light, warm colors, cool colors, complementary, bright colors, neutral colors. You could even make it a monochrome wreath. You could also increase the number of flowers, reduce the number of leaves, or vice versa. These are just a few options that you can experiment with. Also, wherever I feel that the shape of the leaf is not pointed enough or the curvature is not right, I do go back and forth to just fix those leaves. Another optional addition could be thin mid-ribs on all the broad leaves using dark green color and a fine brush. Next up, we are using dark green with the same brush number 7 to paint small oval leaves. They could be in clusters or they could just be randomly dispersed here and there throughout the leafy part of the wreath, some overlapping with the previous layer which has been dried, some which are standing out towards the periphery. The sizes of these green leaves may not be very uniform. I'm doing these leaves either in clusters of 3 with 2 big ones and 1 small one, or I'm doing them in pairs. Also notice that I am trying to keep this color relatively transparent, as this happens to be the third layer of leaves in the wreath. So I do not want it to overpower the leaves at the bottom, and they should show through very gracefully through these transparent leaves. Now to add some warmth to the composition, I'm also adding similar leaves in golden yellow. You may choose some other color to do this. This 48 set of colors does spoil you for choice. But yeah, I wanted the kind of warmth that this color brings and how beautifully it complements both the teal and the pink that we are yet to start with. Now I'm going to take brush number 1, you could also use brush number 0 or 00 to make clusters of very tiny thin leaves. The way to place those leaves onto the paper is simply by touching the tip of the brush and making a cluster of 4 or 5 at one go. I'm using golden yellow for half the leafy portion, and then I will be switching to amaranth. The right way to place these strokes is by altering the angle at which you're holding the brush and also going on rotating the wreath time to time. The reason for using amaranth in this part of the wreath is so that there is some kind of coherence between the leafy and the floral part. Always try to create a balance in your composition by avoiding collection of one set of colors in one part and focus on other colors on the other part, because that sort of creates a break in the composition and also makes it look unnatural. Next up, I'm using brush number 7 and the color Rosy to create a bed of buds in which we will be placing our floral embellishments. The reason for creating this bed of buds in the same color as we will be using for the floral embellishments is to ensure that those being 3D elements do not stand out when we place them on the 2D watercolor part. Again, we will be painting the buds towards the inside of the wreath as well as outside, on the left as well as right. You could add a touch of amaranth dots at the bottom of each of these buds just to give them more depth and dimension. Once these pink buds are done, we leave them to dry and we start with the next step, which is to choose the medium-sized blossoms and paint one side of those with the color Rosy. Make sure that you're trying and covering all the edges of the flower. Some of them might get left out, but that is okay because we will be using a golden highlighter later. We then pick up the smallest flower in the blossoms and paint it with amaranth. We will make this one relatively darker than the previous one because this flower sitting on top of the Rosy is going to add the third dimension that will make our embellishment look even more 3D. We make as many sets of these as required and set them to dry. They will take more time. Next, we use a very fine brush size 1 or below to make stems with black green or any other green of your choice here and there wherever required in the pink buds as well as through the remaining part of the wreath. If you had not done midribs so far, you could choose this time to add some midribs in the parts of the broadleaves that are showing. Try not to go overboard with stems as they can make the wreath look very overcrowded. We will make some and the rest we can just leave to the imagination. Then we use Deco Magic glue, or you could use any other adhesive. Using a brush, place it at the center of the pink flower, at the back of the amaranth flower, and then join the two as shown. Press it in the middle and keep it on the side. Once you have made the desired number of flowers, or maybe a couple of them extra, use a bit of the same glue at the back of the flower and place it in the wreath. Before placing it in the wreath, I prefer folding the flower upward a little, which further enhances the 3D look of the blossoms. Do not press the flowers down initially, because you would like to place them randomly and then try to see if you want to alter the orientation. So do not stick them very firmly in the beginning, just place them haphazardly and then move them around here and there to get the final look that appeals to you, and then press them down. Next up, I'm using this golden paint marker to drop some highlights like circles in the centers of each of the flowers in the amaranth portion, and also to highlight the edges of all the petals of the rosy portion of the flower. This highlighting is very random. It does not have to be very precise or clean or neat. It is just to add a bit of random embellishments. If you are averse to the color golden, you could just use your brush and use a darker shade of rosy to add the same highlights. It just further enhances the 3D look of the flower. You could also use some more of the golden throughout the rest of the wreath to just put dots here and there. Keep in mind, for this gold marker, you have to shake it well before use. The instructions are written on the marker. It is a paint marker, so it does have a bit of a scent, but that will not bother you. Next, we use a black fine liner. Here I'm using 0.1. You could also use 0.05 for even finer details. I'm just adding tiny dashes around the golden center that we had drawn. This step again is optional. If you want, you could also further enhance the black highlights by adding some dots in the petal areas. And now, coming to the final step of the wreath, we use the two brush method to splatter some rosy and amaranth in the green part of the wreath and some blue and green in the pink part of the wreath. This just gives it a more mystic look. It's an optional step again. And with this, our wreath is complete. Let's have a closer look. See how those pink dots just create the right contrast with the green color, and vice versa. When you turn it around, you can see the gold embellishments as well. You could also use a variety of other embellishments of watercolor paper which are available at Itsy Bitsy. I hope you had fun. Thank you so much for watching.